Good morning, all of you. In the previous class, we have studied about the electrostatic potential due to a dipole. So I've given you a homework as well to find the electrostatic potential at the axial point as well as at the equatorial point by taking two different points and then two different diagrams you need to draw. Please send me then on my emails the respective homework that I've given you. So I'll be just checking it up and then telling you back that what are the corrections that are need to be done. In this class, we need to study about the equipotential surface and the properties of equipotential surface. We will be deriving a relation between the electric field and the potential difference V. And then we'll be discussing the potential energy of a dipole in an external electric field. So these three topics we need to cover today. Let's begin with that. What is an equipotential surface? Okay. So an equipotential surface, as the name suggests, equi means same, and potential, you know, that potential is the work done to bring a charge from infinity to a given point and then dividing that work done with the charge that you have brought. Okay. So equipotential means, equi means equal. So if the surfaces on which the potential remains same all over the place, so at every point on that surface, the potential is same, those surfaces are known as equipotential surfaces. All right. So on all the points of the surface, the value of the potential, it remains constant. It remains the same. Those surfaces are known as equipotential surface. We have found out the potential because of a point charge. Okay. We've also found out the potential because of electric dipole. In the same manner, we need to find out that how the equipotential surfaces will look like for various charge configurations. Okay. So that's our job is that we will be drawing the equipotential surfaces for various charge configurations, starting up with the simplest case, that is the equipotential surface due to a point charge. So let's do the maths. For a single point charge, the potential is given by V equal to KQ by R. This is our formula. For a single point charge, the potential at a distance R is given by this formula, that V is equal to KQ by R. So it means that V remains constant if R is constant. If somehow we keep this R as constant, then the value of V remains constant because K is constant and Q is constant. So the value of V depends on the value of R. And if we keep this R as constant, the fixed value for R is given to us, then the value of V remains constant. So for a single point charge, if we need to draw the equipotential surface, then they will be in the form of concentric spherical surfaces with the charge at their center. Okay, let's take a charge. So this is my plus Q charge. Okay, and if I will be taking the potential at a distance R from it, okay, so the electric field from this point charge will be in this direction. All right, because from the positive charge, the electric field will always be moving out from the point charge. Now, if we need to find the equipotential surface because of this point charge, first we need to find the potential. So potential at a distance R is KQ by R. So if this is a distance R from this point charge, if I take distance R, the potential is KQ upon R. At R distance, here also it is KQ upon R. Here also it is KQ upon R. On every point which is at a distance R from this plus charge, the potential will be same. So if I join all the points which are at a distance R from this positive charge, point positive charge, I'll be getting a sphere like this. You can see. So this is the case in case of a point charge. The spheres of different radiuses, they are at a given distance. So when you join all the points which are at a given distance from the point charge, you will be getting a sphere. So this sphere is a equipotential surface for this point charge. Similarly, for different distance, the radius of the sphere increases. So there may be some different potential, but at all the points on the second sphere, the potential remains the same. So for point charge, the equipotential surfaces will be in the form of concentric spherical surfaces with a charge present at their center. See, consider these as a sphere. It is not a circle. There is a difference between circle and sphere. It is a sphere. Sphere means three-dimensional figure. Okay, so it's not possible to draw the three-dimensional figure on a two-dimensional plane. That's why they are represented in the form of circles, but they are concentric spheres. So at every point on this blue colored sphere, you can see the potential will be same because the points, they are lying at the same distance from this point charge. Similarly, the second one, on every point on the sphere, the potential will be same because the distance of the point of the sphere is same from the positive charge. All right. So these are the equipotential surfaces for a single point charge, and they will be in the form of spheres with the charge present at their center. Okay. If you want to ask something, please ask. I'm stopping a bit. You are having some queries, please ask. Now we need to find the equipotential surfaces for a uniform electric field. Okay, so this is the earlier one we have done, the equipotential surface for a single point charge. That is, for a single charge Q, the equipotential surfaces are the spherical surfaces with the charge present at their center, and the electric field lines are radial. That is, they are perpendicular to the equipotential surface. So from this figure, we can say, we come to know this, that the electric field lines are perpendicular to the equipotential surface. We will also be having a proof for this later on when we'll be discussing about the properties of the equipotential surfaces. We'll prove this, that why the electric field lines are always perpendicular to the equipotential surfaces. All right, but we can use this property to draw the equipotential surface for a uniform electric field. Okay, so this is the radial lines of the electric fields, and they are always perpendicular to the equipotential surfaces. Okay, now we have to go through another equipotential surface, that is for a uniform electric field. Generally in your question exams, they ask you to draw the equipotential surfaces directly, and also they may be asking you to prove some of the properties of the equipotential surfaces that we are going to discuss just in a while. Okay, so you have to keep this thing in mind, that how the figure look like and how the diagram you have to make for different charge configuration. For single point charge, you have to make the concentric spherical surfaces. For a uniform electric field, the electric equipotential surface will be the planes. They will be in the form of planes. You can see like this, that for a uniform electric field E that is moving along the x-axis, the equipotential surfaces are in the form of planes which are perpendicular to the x-axis. Okay, so they will be in this form. That is the planes parallel to the YZ plane. Let's see them. So this is my electric field marked with red color. The equipotential surfaces for this configuration will be the planes which are perpendicular to this electric field. Okay, so these are the planes which are perpendicular to the electric field. We know this, that the equipotential surfaces are always perpendicular to the electric field from our previous discussion. Based on this, we have drawn the planes which are perpendicular to the electric field, and on every point on these planes, the potential because of this electric field will remain the same. All right, so for a single for a uniform electric field, the equipotential surfaces will be in the form of planes which are perpendicular to the direction of the electric field. So V1 is the potential on every point on this plane. That's why it is an equipotential surface. V2 is the potential for this plane. So on every point on this plane, whether it is here or maybe down here, the potential is V2 only. It remains the same. Okay, and that's why it is the equipotential surface for this electric field. Similarly, on these points, the potential is V3. So these are the plane equipotential surfaces. If someone asks you what is the shape for a equipotential surface in case of a uniform electric field, you need to tell this, that it is the plane the planes which are perpendicular to the direction of the electric field. Okay, so these are the cases. One case we have discussed for the point charge, and other case we have discussed for the uniform electric field. Two things that we have formulated out of this discussion. One is that the electric field is always perpendicular to the equipotential surfaces. Why so? We will be discussing it when we will be discussing about the properties of the equipotential surfaces. And on every point of the equipotential surface, the value of the potential is constant. It is the same. That's why the name is equipotential. Equi means equal and potential is potential. Okay. So on every point on this plane, the value of the potential is V1 only. On every point on this plane, the value of potential is V2. On every point on this plane, the value of potential is V3. All right. This is how the equipotential surfaces work. Some more figures are also given for the equipotential surfaces in your textbook. So please go through them also. Sometimes they ask that what will be the shape of equipotential surface for an electric dipole. So you have to draw it like this. An equipotential surface for electric dipole. This is the minus charge, this is the plus charge. Okay. And this is the equipotential surface for two identical positive charges. So you just have to keep in mind that how these figures are drawn. You can see that the density of the circles in case of the electric dipole, it is increased towards the force of attraction, because the negative and the positive charge, they attract each other. So the density is increased over here, and it is the spheres are a bit, you can say they are sparsely apart. But in this case, the spheres are sparsely apart over here, and they are increased in their density over here because it is having repulsive force. This is, you have to keep this thing in mind and then to draw it. Generally, they ask this thing, that draw the equipotential surface for various charge configuration. You have to be very good in your practice so that you will be drawing it whenever the question comes. Okay. And there will be some questions on the properties of the equipotential surfaces, as well as to derive those properties. You have to prove those properties that we are going to discuss in the next topic, that is the properties of the equipotential surface. Okay, so these four figures you have to keep in mind, that for point charge, they are in the form of concentric spherical surfaces with the charge centered at their positioned at their center. Similarly, for the uniform electric field, they are in the form of planes perpendicular to the direction of the electric field. For the electric dipole, they look like this, and for the two identical positive charges, the equipotential surfaces will be in the form of figure B. All right. Now we have to go through the properties of the equipotential surfaces. The first property is no work is done in moving a test charge from one point to another point on an equipotential surface. Okay, so it means this. So this is our equipotential surface. If we need to move a charge from this point to another point on this surface only, the work done is 0. Or from this point to this point on this surface, the work done is 0. So if we are moving any charge on an equipotential surface, the work done in moving that charge is 0. Okay, so this is our first property, and the proof for this property, it comes like this. We know this, that the potential difference between 2 points, that is A and B, VA minus VB, is equal to the work done in moving the charge from one point to another divided by the charge that we are taking from one point to another. This is what we have done. The electric potential difference is the work done in moving the charge from one point to another divided by the charge, that is work done per unit charge. Okay, so this is VA minus VB, that is equal to work done in moving the charge from point B to A divided by Q0, where Q0 is the charge that we are moving. Okay, that we know. Now, on an equipotential surface, if the 2 points, they are lying on the equipotential surface, then VA has to be equal to VB, because on every point on the equipotential surface, the value of potential remains the same. So VA has to be equal to VB, because these 2 points, they are lying on the equipotential surface. That's why VA is equal to VB. So you can write it VA equal to VB. So this term becomes 0. The potential difference between 2 points on an equipotential surface is 0. And now the right hand side, it also becomes 0, because when the left hand side is 0 for an equipotential surface, the right hand side also becomes 0. The value of test charge, it cannot be equal to 0. So VBA is equal to 0. You can say VBA is equal to 0. It means the work done in moving the charge Q0 from point B to A, provided the points are lying on the equipotential surface, comes out to be 0. Okay, that's why we say if no work is done and moving a test charge from one point to another on an equipotential surface. I hope it is clear. Now let's take the second property. Okay, so this is the second property. The electric field is always perpendicular to the equipotential surface. That I have told you. Okay, now let's prove it. We have observed this, that the equipotential surface is always perpendicular to the electric field. Now let's prove it. Since no work is done on an equipotential surface, to move a charge on an equipotential surface, no work is done, and that we have proved in our property number 1. So since we are not doing any work in moving the charge on an equipotential surface, we can write it like this. Work done is also written as, work done can also be written as F dot dl, and let we are taking a unit charge, that is Q, the value of Q is 1. So it can be written Q into E can be written as 1 into E. That's why it becomes E dot dl. So for unit charge, Q dot E becomes E dot dl. This work done is the integration of the small work done. All right, that we have done. You have done it when you have derived the formula for the equipotential surface as well as the potential at a point as well as the potential difference between 2 points. Then we have used this formula that the work done to move a charge from point B to A is equal to F dot dl. And in that place of F, you can write Q into E, and the value of Q, let's suppose this thing that we are moving a unit charge. That's why it comes out to be E dot dl. Okay. If someone is having problem in there, please ask. Okay, I'm stopping a bit. Please ask. So this is the formula to move a charge, unit charge from point B to A. Okay. And then since we are moving the charge on an equipotential surface, the work done is 0. That we have found. So VBA can be written as 0. So this complete equations become E dot dl integration equal to 0. When you open up E dot dl, it will be E dl cos theta, and that is equal to 0. Now either E equal to 0 or dl equal to 0 or cos theta equal to 0. So out of these 3 terms, one has to be 0 for this equation to get satisfied. Electric field cannot be equal to 0. dl also cannot be equal to 0. Why so? Because you are moving the charge to a distance. All right, in order to do some work, you are moving the charge through some distance dl. It cannot be equal to 0. It implies cos theta equal to 0. All right, since E and dl, they cannot be equal to 0, this implies this thing that cos theta is equal to 0. And when cos theta is equal to 0, it means theta equal to 90 degree. So the angle between E and dl is equal to 90 degree. Hence, the equipotential surface is always perpendicular to the electric field. Okay, so that's what we have proved, that the E and dl, they are having an angle 90 degree in between them. It means the equipotential surface element dl is perpendicular to the electric field E. All right, so this is our property number 2. The proof for it is very simple. We have utilized the proof for property 1 in this, that is no work done is moving the charge in an equipotential surface, and then we have used the formula for the work done, that is F dot dl, and we have assumed this, that we are moving a unit charge. That's why F becomes equal to E for unit charge. Q into E is equal to F. The value of Q is 1, and then E dot dl, when you expand this dot product, it is E dl cos theta. So either of these 3 terms, one has to be 0. E cannot be equal to 0. dl cannot be equal to 0. Then cos theta is equal to 0, and it comes out to be theta equal to 90 degree. Okay. Then the third property is 2 equipotential surfaces, they cannot intersect each other. Why so? Because if they intersect, then at the point of intersection, there will be two values of the electric potential, and it is not possible at all. Let's understand it with the help of a display or some figures. Let's understand it. So this is my one equipotential surface, and the potential on every point on this surface is V1. We will be proving it by contradiction. Okay, so let's assume this thing that there are two equipotential surfaces, V1 and V2, with potentials V1 and V2, and they are intersecting each other. So this is my first equipotential surface. It is having a potential V1, and this is my second equipotential surface with potential V2. Now, if they are intersecting, then this common area, that is the area at the intersection, at this point, what will be the value of potential? If you are seeing this first equipotential surface, you will be writing it V1 only. If you are seeing it second equipotential surface, you will be writing it V2 only. So it is not possible. It can only be possible when V1 is equal to V2. All right. So two equipotential surfaces with different potentials, they cannot intersect each other. Okay. If they are doing so, then there won't be any value of electric potential at the common area of intersection of the two surfaces. Okay. This can only be possible if they are at the same electric potential. Fine. Now we need to make some notes that electric potential is a scalar quantity, whereas potential gradient is a vector quantity. This quantity potential gradient, we will be discussing it just in the next topics to come. Just in 2 more slides, we'll be discussing this potential gradient, that what it is. So just for comparison, I have given you that electric potential is no doubt a scalar quantity, but when we are talking about the potential gradient, it will be a vector quantity. All right. dV upon dx will be the potential gradient. We'll be just seeing it in a while. Also, we'll be having, when we'll be deriving this formula, we'll be having one negative sign of the potential gradient, and this shows this thing that the rate of change of potential with distance is always against the electric field intensity. The second term we'll be discussing when we'll be deriving the formula for this potential gradient. First, we need to find the formula for this potential gradient, and then I'll come back to this point. Okay, and then only this point will be clear to you, that why this negative sign, from where it is coming, and what is the significance of that. So first, derive the formula for potential gradient. Let's find out the relation between E and V. So please draw this diagram. I'm giving you some time to draw it. Okay, please draw it. Please draw this diagram, and then we'll be deriving a relation between the electric field E and the potential V. So that is very important. It will be very important when we'll be solving up the capacitances, then also it will be important. Okay, so we'll be using it a lot at that time. In this chapter, we have to deal with capacitances also. So when we'll be dealing with the capacitances, in order to derive the relation for the capacitance of a capacitor, we'll be using this formula that we are going to derive just now. And at the end of this expression, we'll be getting the potential gradient also, and then we'll be coming back to the point that we have just discussed. Okay, please draw it. See, we are having one point charge plus Q, and because of this point charge, there is some electric field, that is capital E, and we are moving a small test charge Q naught from point A to B through a distance dx. Okay, so we are moving a point charge from point A to point B. All right, and the distance between the point A and B is very small, that is dx, and the electric field at point A is capital E. Okay, so let's try to solve it. Consider 2 points A and B separated by a very small distance dx in an electric field. Okay, now dx is a very small distance. The electric field E is assumed to be uniform along AB. It means since A and B, they are very small, whatever be the value of electric field at A, the same will be the value of electric field at B. The force acting on a charge Q naught, which is placed at A. So if a charge Q naught is placed at A, the force acting on it will be Q naught into E. So this is the force. The force acting on a charge that is placed at A, the charge is Q naught. So we know this. The force can be found derived by multiplying the electric field with the charge that is present at that point. So force on the charge Q naught that is present at A can be written as F is equal to Q naught into E. Now, let a small work is done in moving the charge Q naught from A to B, and that small work is dW. And we know, since we are moving the charge Q naught from A to B, this plus Q charge, it wants this, that it should be repelled. And we are doing the work against the force of repulsion of this plus Q charge. That's why the angle between F and dx is 180 degrees. So we have to write it like this. The small work done dW, in moving the charge from A to B is equal to F dot dx. All right. And the angle between F and dx is 180. So it will be minus F dx. When you open up the dot product, that is F dot dx cos 180. So that is minus F dx. And in place of F, you can write Q naught E. So that's why the work done comes out to be dW is equal to minus Q naught E dx. All right. Work done is what? The product of the force and the displacement. The force on the charge Q naught when it is placed at A is F, and you are moving it to a distance dx. So you have to take the dot product of F and dx, but the angle between them is 180 degrees. That's why this minus sign is there, because F dot dx is F dx cos 180. Cos 180 is minus 1 and becomes minus F dx. And in place of F, I have written Q naught E. Okay. So this is the negative sign. It shows that work is done against the direction of the electric field. We know this. We are taking this charge against the repulsive force of electric field. All right. And since work done per unit charge is equal to the potential difference dV, since we are moving the charge from A to B, if I divide this work done with the charge that I'm moving, I'll be getting the potential difference between these 2 points. That is small potential difference dV. So I can write it like this. dV is equal to dW upon Q naught, and it comes out to be minus E dx. Just divide it with Q naught, you'll be getting minus E dx. This is the potential difference between points A and B. Okay. What I've done, if I need to find the potential difference between these 2 points, I need to divide the work done in bringing a charge from first point to another point, and then divide it with the charge that I am taking. So I've just divided this dW with Q naught. You'll be left with dV that is equal to minus E dx. All right. And this implies this thing, that E is equal to minus dV upon dx. You can write it like this, that E is equal to minus dV upon dx. All right. So this is the value of the electric field and the relation between the electric field and the potential difference. Okay. So E is equal to minus dV upon dx. This term dV upon dx is known as potential gradient. This term dV upon dx is known as potential gradient, that is potential per unit length. All right. The potential dV is the potential difference between the length dx. So in length dx, the potential difference is dV. The potential difference per unit length, or the potential per unit length, it is known as the potential gradient, and it is related to the electric field as minus dV upon dx. When I was talking about the electric field, I've told you that electric field is having one more unit, that is volt per meter. All right. I've told you that. And this volt per meter is the unit that comes out from this formula, because dV is measured in volt and dx will be measured in meter. That's why the electric field has one another unit, that is volt per meter. Okay. So it comes out from this formula, the unit for electric field, that is volt per meter. Electric field is negative of potential gradient. All right. So this dV upon dx is the potential gradient, and this is the relation between the electric field and the potential difference over a length dx. If V is the potential difference between length L, you can write E equal to V upon L. All right. In magnitude. In direction, it has to be minus V upon L. Okay. Now, The electric field at a point is the negative of the potential gradient at that point. Okay, so the electric field at any point can be calculated by taking the negation of the potential gradient at that point. The quantity potential difference per unit length is known as potential gradient. dV upon dx is your potential gradient. Now, we have to keep these things in mind. In an electric field, the rate of change of potential with the distance is known as potential gradient. I've told you. All right. The potential, rate of change of potential, that is the potential difference known as with distance. Okay, divided by distance, it will be potential gradient. Potential gradient is a vector quantity and its direction is opposite to that of the electric field because negative sign is there. So in this direction, if the direction of electric field is in this direction, so the potential gradient will be acting in that in the direction opposite to it. Potential gradient is related to the electric field as E equal to minus dV upon dx. This is the formula that we have derived. And in the above relation, the negative sign, it indicates that in the direction of electric field, the potential decreases. All right. So the potential always decreases in the direction of electric field. You can say this, or in other terms, you can say this thing that the electric field will always act in the direction of decreasing potential. The electric field will always go in that direction in which the potential is lesser. All right. So this is what we have derived out of this conclusion. Please keep this thing in mind that it is the potential difference over a length dx. Okay, we will be using this equation when we'll be deriving the capacitance of a parallel plate capacitor. All right. So please keep this thing in mind. And because of this, there is one different unit of electric field, that is volt per meter. Okay. Now let's come back to the point that we have skipped in between. The second point, that is this one. The note in the note, first note is very much clear. Electric potential is a scalar quantity, whereas potential gradient is a vector quantity. We have derived what is potential gradient, and it is a vector quantity. The first point, the negative sign of the potential gradient, it shows that the rate of change of potential with distance is always against the electric field intensity. Okay, so potential gradient always be in a direction opposite to that of the electric field intensity or the electric field. So this is what the second term means. E is equal to minus dV upon dx. Okay, so now it is clear that the direction of the potential gradient is always opposite to that of the electric field. It acts always against the electric field. Okay, so I hope it is clear. The second point. Now let's quickly discuss the last topic for today, and that is the potential energy of a dipole in an external electric field. Please draw this diagram. I'm giving you some time and then we'll be discussing it up. Okay, 1 or 2 minutes I'm giving. Please draw it. Consider that we are having an electric dipole AB with the charges Q1 as plus Q and Q2 as minus Q. So Q2 is placed at A, minus charge is placed at A, and plus charge is placed at B. So this is our dipole, and the length of this dipole is 2A. Okay, so this complete length is 2A. All right, and it is placed in an uniform electric field having an electric field strength as capital E. All right, we need to derive the potential energy expression for this dipole when it is kept in an external electric field. We know this, that when we place a dipole in an external electric field, then it begins to rotate. Why so? Because a torque will act on the dipole, and the value for that torque we have found out, and it comes out to be P cross E, where P is the dipole moment vector. This is the dipole moment vector from minus Q to the plus Q. This is dipole moment vector. So we know this, that when we place a dipole in an external electric field, it experiences a torque, and the torque experienced by the dipole when it is placed in an external uniform electric field is given by tau equal to P cross E. And when you solve it out, it comes out PE sine theta. A cross B is, and n cap is the direction of this torque. Okay, so it is PE sine theta. All right, where P is the electric dipole moment, that is Q multiplied by the, that is Q, one of the magnitude of the charges multiplied by the distance between the charges of the dipole. And E is the electric field, and theta is the angle between P and E. So this is my theta, because direction of P is marked with this blue arrow from minus charge to plus charge, and E is in towards the x-axis. So the angle between them is theta. Okay. Now, small work done in moving the dipole by a very small angle d theta. Since this dipole is placed like this, and you are trying to rotate this dipole by a very small angle d theta. You want this, that it should be rotated, so you have done some work in order to rotate this dipole. And then that small work, that is equal to dw, it can be calculated as tau d theta. See, when we calculate the work done, when force is applied, what we do? Force multiplied, force having a dot product with the force multiplied with what? You are having a dot product of force along with a displacement. Similarly, in the rotational analog of force is torque, and the rotational analog of theta is d theta. All right, it is the angular displacement. So if you multiply this torque with an angular displacement, you will be getting the work. Okay, so small work done and rotating the dipole by a very small angle d theta, it is given by tau d theta. All right, the torque multiplied by angular displacement gives you the work done. Okay, now put the values that we know. So dw is equal to tau d theta that we have derived, that we have obtained in the previous slide. In place of this tau, you can write P cross E, that is PE sine theta. All right, so it is equal to P sine theta, you can write it. And when you need to find the total work done in rotating a dipole from some angle to some another angle, what you will be doing? You will be integrating the small work done. The total work done is what? The integration of the small work done. The total work done to rotate the dipole from angle theta I to theta f is given by integration of small work done. All right. So when you integrate it up, you'll get like this. Total work done is the integration of the small work done, dw, and from an angle, initial angle theta I to a final angle theta f. All right. So earlier the dipole was placed at an angle theta I, and you want that it should be moved to an angle theta f. That is the integration of this small work done. And in place of this dw, I can write tau d theta. In place of tau, you can write P cross E. The value of the torque acting on an electric dipole is P cross E. So you can write it like this. All right. That is P cross E sine theta d theta. All right. You can write like this. It is A, not alpha. It is A cos theta. 2A na. So this distance is A cos theta. We won't be using it. Okay. We won't be using this A cos theta. You can be using it if you will be finding this energy by some another formula. Okay. So we won't be using it. We can easily be obtaining by this only. It is not alpha, it is A cos theta. So you can write it like this. In place of this tau, you can write P sine theta. And this is that we have obtained in the previous slide. The torque acting on a dipole placed in a uniform electric field is P sine theta. Now, this P is constant, we know. E is also uniform. You can take it out of the integration. And then the integration of sine theta from theta I to theta f. The integration of sine theta is equal to minus cos theta. We know this. So you can write it like this. That integration of sine theta is minus cos theta. And the limits are from theta I to theta f. All right. I'm telling you again what we have done. We have taken the integration of the small work done in order to calculate the total work done. and rotating the dipole from an angle theta I to theta f. Now this torque can be replaced by P sine theta. So this is the torque that is experienced by a dipole when it is placed in an external electric field. And this P and E can be taken out of the integration, and you are left with sine theta d theta only from theta I to theta f. And now when you integrate sine theta, it becomes minus cos theta. Integration of sine theta is minus cos theta, and the limits are from theta I to theta f. Now put the limits. First put the upper limit, then minus sign from your side, and put the lower limit. In place of theta, you need to put theta f, and then again minus sign from your side, and in place of theta, you have to put theta I. So it will be looking like this: PE cos theta I minus cos theta f. Why so? Because first when you put theta f in place of theta, there will be minus, and then one minus from your side, and then again this minus. Those two minus become plus. That's why this cos theta I will be of plus. Okay, so it comes out to be PE cos theta I minus cos theta f. Okay, this work done gets stored in the form of potential energy of the dipole. All right, so we know this: the work done to rotate the dipole from one angle to another angle gets stored in the form of potential energy of the dipole. So we can write it, we can replace this W by U. That is the expression for the potential energy. So you can write it like this, that U equal to PE cos theta I minus cos theta f. All right. So this is the expression for the potential energy of a dipole when you are rotating it from an angle theta I to theta f. Now let's take the zero of the potential energy. The zero of the potential energy means that there must be some angle at which the potential energy is zero. Just like the potential energy of water, at the ground it is zero. When you take the water from the ground to some height, the potential energy increases. All right. So the zero for the potential energy of the water is the ground level, because at the ground level there will be no potential energy for the water. Similarly, there must be some angle for the electric dipole at which the potential energy is zero. So we have chosen water ground level as the potential energy zero level for the water. Similarly, we have chosen one angle, that is pi by 2. When the electric dipole is placed in such a manner that the angle between the electric field and the dipole moment is 90 degree, then it won't be having any potential energy. Okay, that is the ground level for it. All right or not? Fine. So that's the ground level for it. So now then you place theta I is equal to pi by 2, and theta f is some angle theta. So you have replaced this theta I with pi by 2, that is the zero level for the potential energy, and theta f is the angle at which you want your dipole to be rotated. All right. So we have replaced this theta f by theta. So the equation becomes like this: in place of theta I, you have written pi by 2, that is 90 degree, and in place of theta f, you have written theta, that is the angle at which you want your dipole to be rotated. Now cos pi by 2 is 0, and the final expression, it comes out to be U equal to minus PE cos theta. And you can write it like this also: AB cos theta can be written as A dot B. You can write it like this. In vector terms, you can write it like this, that PE cos theta can be written as vector P with a dot product vector E. All right. So this is the expression for the potential energy of a dipole. Now there are three possibilities that based on this angles. All right. So what we can do? Either we can rotate the dipole, okay, anti-clockwise or clockwise. So let's see them. Three possibilities are there. Case one, when theta equal to 0, it means you want that your dipole should be rotated from pi by 2, that is earlier it is placed perpendicular to the electric field, and from there you want that it should be rotated to an angle 0 degree. All right. So when this theta is becomes 0 degree, the equation becomes minus PE cos 0 is 1, and that is the condition for stable equilibrium. It is the condition for stable equilibrium of the dipole. Now if you want that theta equal to 90 degree, so earlier it is placed at 90 only, and you want that it should be kept at 90 only. So no work needed to be done if you see in that manner. And also when theta equal to 90 degree, this equation PE cos 90 is 0. So U becomes 0 in that case. And finally, if you want that theta equal to 180 degree, all right, you want to rotate the dipole in such a manner that the angle between the electric field and the dipole moment vector is 180 degree. Okay, so earlier it is you are rotating it from 90 degree towards the 180 degree. So theta becomes 180 degree and the dipole potential energy comes out to be U equal to PE, and this is the case of unstable equilibrium. Okay, so this is all that I want to discuss for today. I hope that it is clear, and still if you are having some problems, please ask me. I'll be giving you some time to ask up the questions, and I request you to please send me the homework in email. Okay, the homework that I've given you to find the electric potential due to a dipole at an axial point as well as on the equatorial point. So you need to two different diagrams. First, take the axial point, find the derivation for it, try to compare it with the result that we have obtained in our cases, and then again find it for the equatorial point. And please send me to my email ID purvel.kumar@dalmiavidyamandir.education. Okay, please, I am waiting for it. Some of you people have sent me, others have not sent, so please send. That's all from my side. Thank you very much for joining the class, and now you are free to ask up your doubts, whatever you want to ask. All right.